All right. Hey guys, welcome back to Act 4 of Much Ado About Nothing. And this is where all the drama happens. So if you love people being like broken up with at the altar, if you love misunderstandings, if you love like the villain winning for a couple of minutes and just conflama drama llama, this is the act for you. It's also, relatively speaking to this play, a short act. We have scene one, which is the whole wedding scene and the aftermath, and then you have scene two, which is kind of going on parallel to that, with the interrogation of the baddies. But basically, most of this act is scene one. All right, let's get into it. Now, it's the wedding. And if you remember, we have Claudio planning to denounce Hero. Hero doesn't know that any of that's going on, right? Okay, so Leonardo tells Friar Francis, who's officiating, like, do the fast version of the wedding ceremony. So he starts with, like, do you come to marry this lady? And Claudio says no. And then Leonardo does, like, oh, no, to be married to her. You come to marry her, Friar. And Friar's like, oh, okay, all right. Do you come to marry this man? She says yes. And then the friar does those quintessential lines, right, in every, like, drama filled wedding you've ever seen. If either of you know any inward impediment why you should not be conjoined, I charge you on your souls to utter it. And Claudio turns to Hero and says, well, do you know any reason that we shouldn't be married? And she says, no, my lord. And um, the, the friar turns to Claudio and says, do you know any? And Leonardo jumps in and says, I dare make his answer none. And Claudio's like, oh, you do you? What do you dare? And Benedict starts to like make a joke of it, like, ha ha, interjections, right? But then Claudio's like, stand aside, friar. And he turns to Leonardo, right? Hero's father, and says, do you give me your daughter freely? And uh, Leonardo says, yes, of course I do. And Claudio then says, and what can I give back to you that's worth this? And he says, nothing. The prince, right, his best man, Don Pedro, says, nothing unless you give her back again. And Claudio says, that's an excellent lesson. Thank you very much. Take her back. And shoves her back to her father and says, give not this rotten orange to your friend. She's but a sign and semblance of her honor. Behold how like a maid she blushes. Oh, what authority and show of truth can cunning sin cover itself withal? Comes not that blood as modest evidence to witness simple virtue? Would you not swear, all of you that see her, that she was a maid by these exterior shows? But she is none. She knows the heat of a luxurious bed. Her blush is guiltiness, not modesty. Okay, so this is a whole thing about her not just being unfaithful to him, but being impure, right? Having been with somebody else and not coming to her wedding um, a pure, modest virgin. And you can understand why, in this period, that's so important, particularly as she's marrying a duke, right? If you're marrying somebody who owns property, and because we have primogeniture, right? The property passes to the oldest son. Well, you got to make darn certain that that oldest son is your kid, right? And not somebody else's kid. And the only way to make sure of that is to make sure that the woman you marry has never been with anybody else. So this whole idea about virtue and innocence and virginity and all this coming into a wedding really has to do with patriarchy and the inheritance of property, right? It doesn't actually have to do with her as a person. But Claudia also sees it as a betrayal and that she's lying to him because she's saying, oh, I've been faithful to you. Like, you're my first love. And he's like, wrong. And rejects her in front of everybody. Now, everyone is completely shocked, right? So Leonardo's, what do you mean? And he says, I don't mean to get married. I'm not going to knit my soul to an approved wanton, like approved whore, basically. And he calls her all kind of bad names. And Leonardo, like, steps in and is like, listen, if you slept with her before the wedding, I get it. You guys are both young. And Claudio gets really mad about that and says, like, I know you would say if I'd known her, she embraced me as her husband, and we just kind of jumped the gun a little bit. But I never, never asked her to do anything like that. Like, I'm a man of honor. I never did that. And so there's this huge scene in front of everyone. And Claudio is rejecting her and saying, well, you look this way, but you're clearly that way, and I can prove it. And Leonardo, her father, turns to Don Pedro in desperation. Is like, aren't you going to stop this? And he's like, I'm not going to stop it because I saw her. I saw her too, and I back up my friend, right? I stand dishonored who've gone about to link my dear friend to a common stale. Like, by linking her to my friend, I'm dishonored too because she betrayed me too. And Don John, of course, is like, yep, yep, I saw her too, I saw her too. Benedict, and this is a really interesting point here, Benedict doesn't back up Claudio or Don Pedro because he wasn't there. And so he just gets really worried, like, this doesn't look like a wedding to me. But this is a really interesting point. He doesn't take Claudio's side or Don Pedro's side here. He's sort of standing to the side a little bit. So Claudio asks, can he ask Hero one thing? And Leonardo's like, okay, I will make her answer you. And Claudio asks her where she was last night, and she says, I was in bed, right? And he's like, no, you're a liar. You were up there with Benedict. I'm sorry, not Benedict. You were up there with Baraccio. I saw you. And then they ask Beatrice. Oh, no. And then Hero sinks. She faints. And she faints because her father rejects her. Because, she was so close to her father. And Leonardo's like, hath no man's dagger here a point for me? So all these people she's trusted, like at what should be her happiest moment, right? She's getting rejected and slandered, which is when someone says deep untruths about you in front of other people. Uh, and she faints from all the stress. And Beatrice is trying to help her. Don John was like, well, she's just ashamed that the stuff came to light, and leaves. And Claudio and the prince follow after him. But guess who doesn't leave? Benedict doesn't leave. Benedict stays there with Beatrice. So it's Leonardo, Hero who's fainted, Beatrice, Benedict, and the priest. And everybody else kind of storms off. And the priest tries to comfort her. Her father asks, like, well, he asks Beatrice, like, where was she last night? And Beatrice says, well, like, she's not been unfaithful to him. Every night except last night, we've shared a room. And her father's like, well, that's proof that it wasn't last night, that she must have been cheating. And then he is so angry. You know how sometimes parents say things that are really hurtful when they're angry and they don't really mean them? But Leonardo does this speech about how she's fainted, right? She might as well be dead. She might as well die right there because she has so shamed him, and he's so brokenhearted about it. He used to be sorry that he had one child, and now he's sorry he has any. And it's just a heartbreaking speech for anybody who has a good relationship with their dad, right? Um, and Benedict of all peoples, like, hang on. I think there's something weird going on here. Don't be so harsh on her. Be patient. There's something going on. Beatrice is 100% sure they're lying about her cousin. Beatrice is ride or die for Hero. And she says, look, Hero isn't doing anything. Hero didn't do this. I don't know what's going on, but Hero didn't do this. And so then the priest says, look, I've known her since she was a child. I know when she's lying and when she's telling the truth, and I know she's telling the truth. And so Leonardo starts coming around, right? He starts letting go of some of this anger and a little bit. And the friar's like, who are you accused of being with? And Hero at this point has woken up. She's like, I don't know. I have no idea what they're talking about. I don't know. So the friar and Benedict are like, there's something going on here. Benedict's like, two of them have the very bent of honor, and if their wisdoms be misled in this, the practice of it lies in John the Bastard, whose spirits toil in the frames of villainies. So Benedict knows it's gotta be Don John. He's at the root of this, like he always is, right? And so Leonardo's like, look, if they're telling the truth, I'll kill her myself. But if they're lying, I'll go to battle with them. Well, this is a huge problem, right? Because him going to battle with the prince isn't just one man fighting another man. He's talking about starting a war against his prince. That's treason. That destroys the peace of the community that we had right at the beginning, right, when they greeted each other as friends. This is a big deal, a big problem. Okay? So the friar's like, hold your horses. I got a plan. Now, if you've ever read Romeo and Juliet, his plan's going to sound kind of familiar. Okay? Here's his plan. They're going to lie and say that she died when she fainted. Okay? They're going to have a whole funeral for her and say that Hero is dead. And what that's going to do is make Claudio think about all the good times with her, the whole week, I guess. He's going to think about how much he loved her and all of that, and he's going to forget how much he was mad. And it says, the supposition of the lady's death will quench the wonder of her infamy. And if it sorts not well, you may conceal her, as best befits her wounded reputation, in some reclusive and religious life, out of all eyes, tongues, minds, and injuries. Oh yeah, the good old convent, right? When in doubt. So basically, if it works, and if Claudio forgives her, she can basically, rise from the dead. Like, oh, we were just kidding, she was alive the whole time. If he doesn't forgive her, and if they don't get to the bottom of it, she can always go live in a convent. Sucks to be a hero? Okay, but Benedict's like, look, okay, it's the only plan we've got. Let's not start a war. Let's not kill your daughter. Let's listen to him. Okay, and Leonardo says, being that I flow in grief, the smallest twine may lead me. So he's going to take the tiny little bit of hope he's got. Okay, so Leonardo, Hero, and the friar leave the scene, and we're just left with Beatrice and Benedict. Now, this is the kind of the scene we've been waiting for, right? Now, Beatrice is standing there crying because she's so stressed out, because she's so supportive of her cousin, because she's so brokenhearted about this whole thing. And Benedict asks her, like, Lady Beatrice, have you wept all this while? Yea, and I will weep a while longer. I will not desire that. You have no reason. I do it freely. Surely I do believe your fair cousin is wronged. Ah, how much might the man deserve of me that would right her? Is there any way to show such friendship? A very even way, but no such friend. May a man do it? It is a man's office, but not yours. I do love nothing in the world so well as you. Is not that strange? Okay, this is great. She's like, this is like the fanfic scene, right? Where they finally get together and he's trying to comfort her and he just kind of blurts out that he loves her. And he wants to help her and he wants to do whatever he can, and he believes Hero is honest. He believes that the men are wrong and Hero is right, which is a huge break, right? And then Beatrice, through her tears, says, as strange is the thing I know not, as were as possible for me to say I love nothing as well as you. But believe me not, and yet I lie not. I confess nothing, and yet I deny nothing. I'm sorry for my cousin. Right? She's like, I love you, but I, and she can't quite, and then finally she does say it. Okay. And then he asks her, All right, you ready for this? This is so good. Benedict asks her, "Come, bid me do anything for thee." Right? You love me, I love you. Ask me to do anything for you. And what does she ask him? Kill Claudio. She asks him to kill his best friend for her cousin's honor. Oh! And he says, "Not for the wide world." And she says, "You kill me to deny it. Farewell. Like, if you won't do this, we're done before we even start." And he keeps trying to, like, hang on, but. And she says, "You dare easier be friends with me than fight with mine enemy? Is Claudio thine enemy?" And she goes, like, "Is he not approved in height a villain that hath slandered, scorned, dishonored my kinswoman? Oh, that I were man! What? Bear her in hand until they come to take hands, and then, with public accusation, uncovered slander, unmitigated rancor. Oh, God, that I were a man, I would eat his heart in the marketplace." This is why she's such a good character, y'all. She's so angry and frustrated, and she can't go out and challenge Claudio to a duel. She'd do it in a minute if she could, and she'd probably win. But she's not allowed to. She has to have a male champion. And it has to be Benedict because he's the only guy who can really fight Claudio, right? Anne says he loves her, but if he loves her, he's got to be on her side. So now he's got to pick his best friend or the woman he loves. And guess what he picks? He says, right at the end of this scene, "Enough. I am engaged. I will challenge him. I will kiss your hand, and so I leave you. By this hand Claudio shall render me a dear account. As you hear of me, so think of me. Go, comfort your cousin. I must say she is dead, and so farewell." So he takes the challenge. He is going to prove his love to Beatrice by challenging his best friend to a duel for the honor of hero. Oh, it's so good, right? It's so good. All right, last little bit in Act 4 is Scene 2. And it's an important scene, but after the emotional heights of Scene 1, right? The heights and the crashes and the heights and the crashes and everything just galvanizing in those two relationships. This is another comedy scene. And it's an interrogation with Dogberry and Verges and the sexton, who is like the not quite a judge, more like a scribe. Like he's writing down the interrogations, and he knows how this is supposed to go. And Dogberry and Verges have never really interviewed a prisoner before, so they're kind of bad at it. But it's the interview that Dogberry's doing with Conrad and Baraccio, and they get the whole story out of them that Conrad and Baraccio conspired to um, frame Hero and to basically commit treason, and that Don John was behind everything, right? And so now the sexton's like, "Okay, we've got to go tell Leonardo, and we've got to go tell the prince." Um, because the sexton says, "You didn't hear?" He says, "And this is more, masters, than you can deny. Prince John is this morning secretly stolen away." So John bounced after the wedding. After the wedding, and then he realized, like, Baraccio and Conrad got arrested, and he's like, "I'm out, you." Hera was in this manner accused, and in this very manner refused, and upon the grief of this suddenly died. Master Constable, let these men be bound and brought to Leonardos. I will go before and show him their examination. So this is no longer like two guys conspiring. This is now a murder, basically. And so they're going to take Baraccio and Conrad in front of Don Pedro, and they are going to have to tell him what they did. But it's too late, right? it's too late. Everything's ruined, and Hero is dead as far as everybody except her father, the priest, Beatrice, and Benedict are concerned. Everybody else is going to think she's dead. Okay, so that ends Act 4. Whew, that was a lot. I told you conflama drama llama, right? Okay, so in your notes, go into your character notes, jot down what's going on with everybody, what are all their relationships, what's their plots, what's their parts of the plans, and then I will see you back here for the end of the play, Act 5. We'll see how this all works out. All right, until then, bye everybody.